Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Arrowhead Addict podcast. I'm Matt Verderame. He is Ben Heisler, of course, managing editor over at BetSided, and this is Best Bets with BetSided for the Jags and the Chiefs this Sunday coming up. Welcome to everybody in the chat, except for Lucas, by the way. It's just a devil suck, to be honest, Verderame. Lucas, I got to tell you, that would be the truth for the last decade. They're 10-3, and analytically, they might be the greatest team to ever play hockey. Don't overstate it. Just want to be honest. All right, let's talk about things. So there's a lot going on this week. Not just with the Chiefs, although of course that's what we're going to talk about here. That's what we're going to focus on. The Bills, who the Chiefs are tied with for the best record in the AFC, may not have Josh Allen. Might be Case Keenum. That's a line that has shrunk significantly. But let's just have a jumping off point here. So we're going to get into Chiefs and Jags, but Ben, you're obviously on all these games from a betting angle. Like, what are you surprised at the line moving as much as it has with Buffalo? Are you surprised it doesn't move further? Where are you on that? Is obviously we're watching to see if Josh Allen plays on Sunday.
I'm not surprised that the line has moved to where it is. I know that we had a conversation, you, me, Sterling Holmes over on Back in the Box on Tuesday. Even put up a poll question. I'll see if I can find the results. Curious to get everybody's perspective on that regarding the movement in that game. I know that both you and Sterling agreed that if Josh Allen is confirmed to be out, then that should make Minnesota a favorite in that game after opening at plus 7.5. Right. I contended that Buffalo would still end up being the favorite. Right now it's at 3.5. And I know that Sean McDermott has kind of been iffy about whether or not Allen will play. But the reality is that this is an injury that other quarterbacks have missed a couple of weeks for. It's not Chicken Little for Buffalo right now. Not by any stretch. But I think sometimes you can tell in other ways at how Vegas is reacting to a game by not just looking at the point spread, but by looking at other markets. And a key case in point here is in the MVP market, where Josh Allen was the consensus favorite to win NFL MVP at pretty much every sports book. That's no longer the case. And they don't move the line that much when they have that much liability on somebody like Allen if they don't think he's going to miss some time. So that's kind of where I'm at. As I said at the beginning of the week, I took Buffalo as part of a 2-team teaser because I was like, 7.5. Wish I would have gotten them at 7. Normally I would have taken Buffalo in that spot. So I teased them down to minus 1.5 and then teased them with Pittsburgh at plus 2.5 to go up to plus 8.5. They're at home this week against the Saints, who got their ass kicked on Monday Night Football. Now, Verderame, I'm concerned that by the time this game is said and done, the closing line is actually going to be at the number that I teased Buffalo to. So much for closing line value there. I just don't know if it's going to move any more than down to maybe 3 or 2.5, even if Allen is confirmed out, because the odds makers just love Buffalo so much. And because of their ability to cover throughout the year, like that's been the thing for them is they blow out teams and wins. Yeah. And it's the closer games that you tend to be a little bit more concerned in their inability to cover. So I think that goes into a lot of their power rankings here by making Buffalo right now at 3.5, knowing that if Allen's down, maybe it goes down to 2, 1.5. But I think it's not going to move much further than where it is right now, even with Allen questionable.
Fair enough. I'm fascinated by everything going on in Buffalo right now, mostly because I'm just curious to see if they have to play without Allen. What does that offense look like? He is pretty much their entire offense.
Do you want the results of that poll, by the way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So we put that out just under 24 hours or so ago. So there's still 44 minutes left to vote if you want to do so. Both Verderame and I tweeted it out. So if Josh Allen is confirmed out, this is off of 320 votes on Twitter so far. Should the Bills still be favorites at home over the Vikings? No, got 75.2% of the vote versus yes at 24.8. So the bulk of the public, Verderame, on your side, that Minnesota is deserving of being a favorite if Allen is out for this week.
I just think it's also, too, like, look, Minnesota's maybe the most disrespected 7-1 team in NFL history. Like, they're winning every week. Now, they win these close games. I understand that. And they've not beaten a team that you're, like, overwhelmed by. but they're pretty healthy. They're
Mhm.
really talented offensively, and the Bills are beat up on defense. Like, this isn't just Josh Allen. This is
No
also
doubt.
like Edmonds didn't practice yesterday. Milano missed last week. He was limited on Wednesday. Your Rousseau is week to week. Doesn't look like he's going to be playing this week. Hyde is out for the year. Poyer is week to week. White, we don't know if he's going to be back this week. I mean, there's a lot of guys on the Bills right now. It's just not the same team. That being said, let's get into the Chiefs game. They are pretty heavy favorites in this game,
Yeah.
and the line has not moved much at all. They've been at 9.5, as far as I can tell, all week. Correct me if I'm wrong. Did it open at a different number?
Yeah, it opened up at 10 at some books.
Okay, so it dropped
That
a
was
half
the
point.
original look ahead number as well. Some books open up at 9.5, and that's pretty much where it stayed. So maybe there's been a little bit of movement here, down from 10 to 9.5. We have seen a little bit of movement in both directions on the total. That one opened at 50. It went down to 49.5 for a short period of time. It has since gone up to 50.5. And I think part of where that might have come in is potential cold weather, possible winds in Kansas City. Everything that is being reported now in the football meteorology world is that, yeah, it's going to be cold, but it's not going to be particularly windy. Conditions really won't be much of a factor. It's a traditional November game, maybe on the colder side, as opposed to, sometimes where you can get that nice 50-degree day or so. But other than that, there's not going to be anything that really reflects something that would indicate more towards the under weather-wise this week.
Yeah, the weather right now is supposed to be 43 and cloudy with very little wind.
Yeah.
So the Chiefs should be okay there. By the way, I'd enjoy today because after today it's going to get cold as hell.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you. You've already done this. It's your job. Have you seen the look ahead line for the Chiefs Chargers game next week?
I have not.
Oh wow! All right, good. I'm glad. I'm glad you haven't yet because I wanted to ask you.
Okay.
The game is in LA. I know it's not a huge home field advantage. I get it. What do you think the look ahead line is? Because it surprised me.
In LA, Chiefs have been very good against the spread on the road.
Sunday Night Football now.
Sunday Night Football, so they're likely going to be a big public play. And the Chargers are not good against the spread at home. They've actually been much better on the road. I'll say it's Chiefs -4.
6.
Wow.
I thought it was going to be 3. It's 6.
Well, you know what's interesting? It was 3, I believe. Might have been 3.5 in week 2. Obviously, a lot has changed since then. So
and that was at Arrowhead.
That was at Arrowhead, and the Chargers, I believe, covered in that game with a late touchdown. Again, they were pretty much out of it, but I think they ended up covering that game.
They did. I'm curious, and then we're going to dive into the minutiae here, the Chiefs and Jags. With that, do you still believe that Vegas gives the obligatory 3 points to the home team?
No,
Do you think they
don't.
give any points to the home team?
No, they still give some. It factors in usually, and there's been some good articles written about this. Anywhere between maybe 1.5 and 2 is kind of that number now. And again, different teams have more individualized success at home than some other teams. Again, the Chargers are a perfect example. They have not been a particularly good team at home because it doesn't feel like a home game for them.
It's a road game anyway.
So more often than not, they've actually been a better road covering team compared to when they go back to SoFi Stadium. And it's interesting because the conditions of playing indoors on that track should set up really well for the type of team that the Chargers are, right? Fast, Herbert with a big arm. You got speed on the outside. Eckler is an elite talent with the ball in his hands. Defensively, when everybody is healthy, you have really good pass rushers on that team, and nobody's being slowed up by bad weather and grass. Just hasn't been the case, and they cannot stop the run. And that'll be a fascinating opportunity for Kansas City to see, all right, you're going up against arguably the worst run defense in the NFL this year. What are you going to do? And Andy Reid even talked about it this week, that they got away from the run last week in opportunities against Tennessee when they really should have taken advantage of it.
Well, that's the immovable force against the irresistible force against the immovable object. I expect the Chiefs to look at that and not run the ball once, because that's what they do. All right, let's get into this game. So, and by the way, that line could even climb with the Chiefs against Jacksonville. and the Chargers against the Niners. So you can see if the Chargers lose and the Chiefs win, that line might even climb further from the 6. All right, Chiefs 9.5 right now at Jacksonville.
Yeah.
I went back and looked. One thing that surprised me, so Jacksonville is not a good football team. I mean, Jacksonville at this point is 3-6.
Did you buy on them early on this year that they maybe had a shot in a terrible division with how bad the Colts looked? And
yeah, I did.
Because I did too.
I did. So before the year started, I listed them. I went on the radio in a million cities, I feel like, and I listed them as my sleeper team that I thought could go 8-9, 9-8.
Yeah, I was right there with you.
Has not panned out. They sit here 3-6. They have struggled. Their underlying numbers are not that bad, like yards per play and some of their situational numbers, but they're not great at anything, which I think is kind of what really hurts them. There's nothing that stands out about them. They're fantastic in this regard. The one thing I have noticed, do you know how many times they've lost by double digits this year? Or actually, excuse me, let me rephrase that. Do you know how many times they've lost by more than one score?
Not many. They've let a lot of games get away from them. I'm guessing
zero.
That every game has been a one-score loss.
Every single one of them.
Yeah, that's pretty remarkable. It's kind of like the opposite of what we've seen from the Giants this year. All those different comebacks,
close wins,
in the fourth quarter. It's hard to put that on Doug Peterson, right? Because think about where they were last year compared to where they are now. Like,
they're better,
competitive in every game, and he's still trying to coach get the stank off from Urban Meyer last year. But man, at some point you got to turn the corner, and you got to be able to convert down the stretch. That is a product of good coaching, is knowing how to finish games. And in Jacksonville, you're right, hasn't been able to do that much this year.
They haven't. They've been close. They've been really close. They stay in games. I mean, they were literally a yard away from beating the Giants. They were right there against Denver. The Washington game week 1 was nip and tuck, back and forth. Now, it also has to be said, they've also lost to some bad teams. I mean, they've lost to Houston at home.
Yep.
It's the only win the Texans have all year. They went and they lost to Washington and they lost to Denver. The Giants are a good team, but I don't think the Giants are by any stretch of the imagination an overwhelming team. So the Jags have been weird in that regard. I mean, they lost to the Colts. They gave 34 points to the Colts. The only team that they've lost to that I think you'd say, that's a very good team is the Eagles. They were 14-0 in that game. They got outscored 29-7 after it.
Yeah.
So they're a hard team to really peg because they haven't gotten blown out by anybody, but they also have not played a lot of teams that you'd consider upper echelon teams. I mean, their wins are against the Raiders, who they just beat last week, the Colts, who they shut out in week 2, and then that game against the Chargers, which is the game where they won 38-10, and everybody kind of got excited, and then they went on a 5-game losing streak.
They're kind of starting to feel themselves a little bit in the early portion of the season. That's why I think that win against the Raiders was so pivotal for them, because that was finally a game that they finished. Raiders took the lead on them late, struggled a little bit offensively, but then got the run game going with Josh Jacobs. And we've talked about it all year, Verderame. Like, the Raiders, even though they were shut out the week before in New Orleans, that's a good offense. There's quality players on that offense. You can make the argument as to whether or not Josh McDaniels is doing his job. There's certainly a lot of folks in Las Vegas that are not pleased with.
I'm not sure there is an argument. I'm not sure there is an argument that he's done his job. I think that
not with that offense, no. But we also knew that the defense was going to suck, and they've lived up to that reputation.
Yes, they have. But oddly, the Raiders have not been good on offense either. Like that's the thing.
That's the surprising part. Yeah.
You look at them because I mean, you're right, Ben. Like we talked about that all season. Like the Raiders defense is going to be a mess. We actually both were on like, hey, Derek Carr is a sleeper for the MVP because if they're good, he's going to have to basically throw for 5,000 yards and score 1 million points. And obviously he probably would have to do that for them to win, and they're not winning.
He was the number 1 most bet player. Like, this wasn't just us. He was the number 1 most bet player at BetMGM this year.
That's crazy.
To lead the NFL in passing yards. Like, they had to move his odds sizably, like cut him in half and more before the start of the season because of how much money they took on Derek Carr to be the NFL passing yards leader. Like, this was kind of well understood. And then going to McDaniels with all the success that he had over the last several years, in coaching Brady. Again, last couple of years, obviously a very different story. But it was widely known that this was going to be somebody in a key spot where he was going to have to throw the ball plenty of times. Nobody expected the Josh Jacobs resurgence. And that's also played a role in it too.
It's been fascinating. It's been fascinating to watch them. It's a miracle that Denver's as embarrassing as Denver is, and somehow the Raiders are worse. I mean, it's really, it almost feels impossible. But yet, that's true. Remember when this division was going to have 4 playoff teams, or have 3 teams that went all into the playoffs, and the other one was like 10-7, somehow didn't get in? Not so much. All right. So with this Chiefs game, the Chiefs have been a weird team against the spread because they've had a handful of games where they've annihilated the team that they're playing. Tampa, San Francisco, Arizona, all on the road, by the way. They have not been that way in other games. And you mentioned the Chargers game earlier. They had a backdoor. The Chargers had a backdoor cover. The Chiefs were massive favorites on Sunday and needed an inside straight just to win the game. You look at the Bills game. They were dogs. Actually, almost covered. They almost won, but not quite there. Where do you see them in this game? 9.5 points. That if they were to cover, that would be the biggest margin Jacksonville's lost by all year long.
Yeah.
So, but of course the Chiefs are also along with Philly, the best team that they've played all year long. Where do you fall on this game? Where do you see it, and how do you and why?
So here's kind of how I'm evaluating this initially. I think you have to remember that recency bias is a very real thing. And there's also the bounce back theory, right? Team sucks one week, they're more likely to play better the following week. And a lot of times that's true, but you also have to remember a lot of times that the number is built into that message as well. Right. The Chiefs are 0-4 against the spread at home, 0-4 against the spread as a home favorite. Jacksonville, as you mentioned, not much better. 3-6 overall against the spread, 1-3 against the spread on the road and as a road dog. And you're talking about a Chiefs team that even after a win, a straight up win, are 0-5 against the spread in their last 5 games after a regular win. Not just a cover, but a win. Like, there hasn't been anything for Kansas City this year that has been a noticeable trend that says they're more likely to blow you out after a rough game. Where it has been a noticeable trend is when they're as an underdog or on the road starting to have the odds move away from them. And that just hasn't really been the case this year. We've also noticed that the under for both of these teams has been a predictable trend as well. The under is 4-1 in the Chiefs' last 5 games. Also for Jacksonville, that's another team that's gone under in their last several games as well. I think right now I kind of have that same philosophy, Verderame, that we had last week, where Tennessee was just getting too many points. And even with Malik Willis in that game, I trusted Vrabel to have a halfway decent game plan based on his series of success. And they ended up covering that number without hesitation. Right. This week, I think the Chiefs win by more than a touchdown, but I'd still probably lean Jacksonville plus 9.5 because there just hasn't been any indication right now from Kansas City that they're going to bounce back this week, take it to Jacksonville. And the what we've seen over Jacksonville over the last first half of the entire season is that they play close games. So right now, that's my lean. Not going to bet it, at least at this point. I'd like to try and see a better number here. But it's hard to feel excited about the Chiefs covering when they haven't done it once at home all year. And they're going up against a team that has been known all season to compete to the very end. They kind of remind me of the Lions from last year. Lions were a good football team, but they were, I think, the 5th best team in the NFL at covering the spread. And they had, 3 wins all season? The Lions, I think, were 11-6-0 against the spread. And yeah, Jacksonville hasn't covered, but I think that's because odds makers have given them the benefit of the doubt most weeks. Now that they're starting to move away from Jacksonville, despite the fact that they're covering, this might be a time where you start to see the Jaguars start to go on a nice against the spread run, knowing that they may not win a lot of these games either.
So, I mean, I don't bet these games because I can't really, but I think if I was going to bet this game, I would take Jacksonville to cover because Jacksonville has not lost any game by 10 plus points. And I think the Chiefs lines are overinflated because Vegas knows people are going to bet on the Chiefs and the Chiefs are typically going to win. And so people always think, oh, well, they're going to win, so they're going to cover. I will say this. I would not be shocked if this is one of these games where the Chiefs just come out, put it on them. I mean,
no, because we can do that any week.
Right. That and
we do that every week.
After how they played on Sunday night, even though they won, I could see them coming out and just being somewhat focused. But I got to, that's the one thing with the Chiefs. And it's frustrating. You never really know what you're going to get. I mean, they might come out and just absolutely bomb somebody. The other thing they've kind of had a history of, at least this year, up and down to the opponent. Like, now, week one, they came out. Arizona's not good, but I think week one, they felt like they had a million things to prove based off the offseason, and they came out and they blew the doors off Arizona.
Yeah.
Then they play the Chargers. And it's this weird game where the first half, they look like crap. Then they get going. They play better. They win the game. Third week, the Colts, we don't even have to talk about that. There should be a 30 for 30 and an FBI investigation on that game. Okay. Then they go play Tampa, where everybody and their mother, including me, is like, that's not a good matchup. They're not physical enough, whatever. They go out and they kill Tampa, right? And then they get the Raiders, and everybody's like, oh, they're going to kill the Raiders. They're 17-0 before the anthem's over. They got to claw their way back. And it just goes on and on and on. The Bills, they lost, but they played a fairly good game. And then they go to San Francisco, and they smoke San Francisco. I don't know. Like, there's a part of me that looks at this game and says, they didn't play well last week, even though they won. They should be motivated to clean that up. Lawrence has never played in Arrowhead Stadium before. It's a team that I don't know, like, who's the guy. ETN's probably the guy who, if they're going to do stuff offensively, it's going to be him.
Yeah.
Because I don't think the receivers really scare you. I mean, Kirk's having an okay year, fine. It'd probably be Travis Etienne. Defensively, I don't think Jacksonville's secondary is keeping up with the Chiefs in this game. I mean, I think the Chiefs will get open. But it's the kind of game. Like, do the Chiefs go full throttle? Is it one of these things where it's kind of like nip and tuck for a little while? And I would take Jacksonville, even if it's a backdoor cover, even if it's something where the Chiefs are winning like 31-16, and then Jacksonville scores a touchdown late.
Right.
I could see it being like that. But I'll take the Jags to cover. I do think the Chiefs win, but I think Jacksonville will cover.
If I had to make a play on this game, I think the number that I like the most is probably the under. And of course, in your scenario, you have a backdoor cover not only for Jacksonville, but also for the overhead, which I could also see as well. And I still think the public will come in on Kansas City, even though the numbers moved slightly at some books. And where I think the public will come in is on the over. Right now, it's at under 50.5. There's plenty of trends that indicate that, especially for Kansas City, as I mentioned, the under has been the one that's in play. But I also think it's worth noting that this could very easily go to 51. And if it does, that's when I'm going to go ahead and hammer the under, because that gives myself a lot of freedom. 51 is one of the more key numbers as far as total possibilities go. So I'd rather have a push than a loss, obviously. And I see very much, and you can also bet this live because the Chiefs have been one of those teams throughout Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes' history together on scoring on opening drives. Scripted plays has always been a very solid advantage. And more often than not, you're going to see the over really take off from that point, and you can get some value on the under. So my best bet probably for this game right now is on the under 50.5. But as I'm saying now, I would caution anybody betting that number. I'd try to wait a little bit longer or try to bet it live when you get it at 51 or above. One other prop that I like, and again, you can find all these different numbers on Arrowhead Addict if you're looking to get in on the sportsbook scene. I know Arrowhead Addict, both BetSided as well. For this game, it offers all the different available odds. If you're curious to know where you can get the best number for some of these games, for some of these props, all that's available for you. Definitely encourage you guys to check that out over at BetSided and as well as Arrowhead Addict. One prop that I really do like, and I like chasing value on these anytime touchdown bets. I like Evan Ingram to score an anytime touchdown for Jacksonville.
Okay.
You're talking about a team that's going to have a game script of likely throwing the ball often in this game. Travis Etienne is just as dangerous as a runner as he is than just rushing the ball and as a receiver. He's somebody that is always going to be able to extend the field. That's another option that you have to be aware of in the middle of the field. And Engram's a great red zone target, and he's third on the team this year in red zone targets. But if you look at the actual odds, he's fifth of all the different options for Jacksonville this week, and you can get him at just under 4-1 odds. Was targeted last week in the red zone, didn't end up scoring a touchdown, but that's a big target in the middle of the field where the Chiefs can be vulnerable. I think that's a nice play if you're looking for a bit of an anytime touchdown prop that could pay off at nearly 4-1 odds.
Is there a prop? I know some of the props don't come out till later. Is there a prop for Juju
to score an anytime touchdown?
Yeah, and what either that or is over under for yardage?
Juju's anytime touchdown odds right now at DraftKings are even money, which I don't think there's any value on.
No value. No.
Kelsey is minus 165, just for reference and how often that guy has been finding himself open in the red zone this year. He leads tight ends by a wide margin for red zone targets, and rightfully so. But those are the odds that have been released so far. Nothing as far as player props, at least.
Is there an odds anytime touchdown for Jody Fortson?
He's always a popular choice. Yes, you can get an anytime touchdown for Jody Fortson at 15-1.
15-1. That's okay. Well, last one I'll ask you about Noah Gray.
Gray, a little bit lower on the list. He is 6-1. One that surprised me actually was how high up Isaiah Pacheco is. Pacheco is the same odds as Clyde Edwards-Helaire to score an anytime touchdown. They are both at plus 160.
There's no value in that. No. If I was going to do anything, I'd throw a couple bucks on the two tight ends I mentioned. Fortunate if he's healthy enough to play here, although he was not on the injury report this week, so that's good. And then Gray, because Mahomes talked about the fact he wanted to target him more. So
I like it.
I might think about those two guys.
That could be a nice little payoff for you. One of them hits you.
What the heck, right? Especially with teams. Especially teams like, not that anybody stopped him yet in 10 years, but teams key on Kelsey. And the Chiefs love their multiple tight end formations. Real quickly, because you mentioned at the top of the show, we can wrap up with this. And by the way, check out everything Ben does at BetSided, which you can find at fansided.com/BetSide, also BetSided on Twitter, and the Daily Bet Slip. There's a million different things to check out. Of course, BetSide on YouTube as well. The MVP odds. Patrick Mahomes is now the favorite in many books, most books, all books. He is on pace to throw for over 5,500 yards. He is on pace to throw for 45 touchdowns. Do you think that it's a good time to bet him, even though maybe there's not great value, because there's going to be less value as they play the easier part of their schedule? Or do you think at this point that ship has sailed and you should bet elsewhere on MVP odds?
I think it depends on who else you like. If you think Mahomes is going to get it no matter what, then I don't see a scenario in which his odds all of a sudden completely shrink. Now, you might want to wait until after you get more news about Josh Allen and if he's going to be playing or not. Because if Josh Allen plays, then the best value on the board remains on Josh Allen.
Sure.
With Mahomes, he's 2-1 over at DraftKings. I think he's right around the same number at FanDuel. You can always look at all these different sports books and find out where you can get the best number on him. I think the guy that probably has the best chance of moving further down right now is Jalen Hurts, because at some point, I think you and I both agree that the Eagles are going to lose a game or two. And it's, it won't necessarily be Hurts' fault. I mean, there's a lot of good on that team that I think you and I certainly believe in, but I think a lot of his MVP value is tied to the undefeated season.
Yes. No.
He's had a great year. Like, he is deserving of where he is right now on the MVP list. Like, he deserves to be a part of that conversation with Mahomes and Josh Allen.
Yep.
Maybe to a certain extent, Tua. And Tua, I got to tell you what, man. 2 weeks ago, Tua Tagovailoa was 80-1 to win the MVP. Do you know what he is now?
10-1.
8-1.
Yeah.
I may have thrown down a few dollars on Tua back when he was at 80-1. So for all you Chiefs fans out there that are rooting for Mahomes to win the MVP, I certainly would love to see it, but I might like to see Tua a little bit more. I also have Hurts at 18-1 from the start of the season as well. So listen, as long as the Chiefs get number 1 seed, which is also an available prop that you can look into, maybe that's instead of Mahomes as MVP. If you're looking at DraftKings right now, that might be a theoretical play that you might want to look into. The team to get the number 1 seed, especially with Buffalo now potentially losing that number. Like I think the Chiefs have a better shot at plus 250 to get the number 1 seed in the AFC than Pat Mahomes at plus 200 to an MVP. So to me, I kind of think that's where the value is because they have more of a shot to control their own destiny as a team, even if Mahomes doesn't necessarily put up the massive numbers or you're dealing with all these other outside circumstances. As long as the Chiefs win, they have an easy schedule. That's probably the play that I would go with.
I might even put them both on the same ticket because if he's going to win the MVP, they're probably going to be the number 1 seed. Like that would be my guess. Kind of like you said with the Eagles. I think Hurts has been terrific, and if by some miracle they go undefeated, I think he's MVP of the league because how could you not have the MVP of the league on an undefeated team?
Correct.
But I think if they don't go undefeated, I don't think he's winning MVP.
There's another aspect of Mahomes that we consider as well, and that's Offensive Player of the Year. Right now, he's 1,200. He's plus 1,200 to win that award. Tyreek Hill, the favorite, 3-1. Jalen Hurts at plus 350. Then you have Justin Jefferson at 11-1 and Lamar Jackson at 11-1. But if Mahomes throws for 5,500 yards, leads the NFL in touchdowns, and doesn't get MVP, I think you have a very difficult choice not to make him the Offensive Player of the Year. So that might be worth a dart throw as well.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, it'd be funny if Mahomes wins MVP and Tyreek Hill wins Offensive Player of the Year. That would be incredible.
It's kind of like the opposite effect of the divorce between Aaron Rodgers and Devontae Adams. Like,
yes, where both guys haven't gone completely in the tank.
Yes.
By the way, here's I'll leave this as the thought here. So I'm going to look it up just to make sure I'm right. I'm looking up the all-time single-season passing yards. All right, so Peyton Manning, his record, now, of course, 16-game season, 54-77. That is the all-time passing yards total. Mahomes is on pace to beat that. Tyreek Hill is on pace to be the all-time single-season yards leader for a receiver. There was all this conversation about, who's going to miss who more and how's that going to look? The answer apparently is neither one's going to care at all because Tyreek Hill is maybe going to set the ultimate record for a receiver in a season, and Patrick Mahomes might set the all-time record for a single-season passing yards record. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, and I will say this. I said earlier, and I'll leave it at this. If the Eagles go undefeated, I think he's got to be the MVP of the league. I really don't, unless he just falls off drastically statistically. If Mahomes throws for 5,500 yards, he's the MVP. Like, you have to be at that point, right? Like, I think you have to be the MVP, especially if he combines it with 50 touchdowns, which I don't know that he gets there, but he could. I mean, the harder part of their schedule is now behind them.
Right.
They only played 3 teams with a winning record the whole rest of the season, and one of them they're a 6-point favorite on the road against next week. So I am fascinated to see how it all plays out, and we will be here with you guys every step of the way as it plays out. But for now, that's it. That's all I have for you people. You can check out Ben's work, like I said earlier, at BetSided. Check it out on Twitter, YouTube, Ben's handle at Benny Heisler, which you see right there on the screen. Check out all of BetSided's great work, whether it be with Ben or somebody else on staff. I will be back at 4:00 Central with Patrick Allen. And we will break down the Chiefs and Jags in depth from a non-betting perspective and just how the game may go. All right. That is it for right now. I'm going to go eat lunch. I'm starving. I haven't had breakfast today. So Heisler, thanks for being there, man. As always, appreciate it. Hope everybody here has a great rest of their day, and I hope to see you all in about 4.5 hours. So until then, take care. This has been Best Bets with BetSided on the Arrowhead Addict podcast.